Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajanna Randana Yashodanandana Brajajanna Randana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Prima Chakacharya Shima His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Danta Kori Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Gaur Premanandi. So, before starting today's class, we discussed a little bit that today is the disappearance day of Sri Ishvara Puri, spiritual master of Lord Chaitanya. We heard a little this morning about how Ishvara Puri visited Advaita Acharya dressed in disguise. He was a Vaishnava sannyasi, but he wasn't dressed as a Vaishnava sannyasi. But he was very effulgent, and Advaita Acharya said, "This looks like a Vaishnava sannyasi dressed in disguise." And he said, "No, I am just a Shudra, but today I've achieved the perfection of life by seeing your lotus feet." But Mukunda Datta, he wanted to expose the ruse, so he began singing a kirtan about Krishna's Leelas. And he sang so nicely, and when Ishvara Puri heard it, he began rolling on the ground and crying, and the ground became very wet with his tears. And then the jig was up. He was exposed that he was really a great Vaishnava. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that Madhavendra Puri was the root of this magnificent tree of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, and that Ishvara Puri was the sapling. And then Lord Chaitanya blossomed and flourished into this gigantic tree that's taking over the whole universe and bestowing genuine love of God upon everyone everywhere. And Ishvara Puri served his spiritual master Madhavendra Puri so well, even when Madhavendra Puri had become completely an invalid. It pleased Madhavendra Puri very much. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's this description of another disciple of Madhavendra Puri who became critical of his spiritual master, and then he Ramachandra Puri even criticized Lord Chaitanya. So we see that serving the spiritual master nicely is actually the key to success in devotional service. So today we're starting chapter 6, right?
Yeah, 1.
So we should be in third canto, chapter 6, verse 1. 102. So one has a very short purport. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Rishir Uvacha. Iti tasang swashaktinam. Iti tasang swashaktinam. Satinam asametya saha. Satinam asametya saha. Prasupta lokatantranam. Prasupta lokatantranam. Nishamya gatim ishvaraha. Nishamya gatim ishvaraha. Let's just do the translation and purport of this. The Rishi Maitreya said, the Lord thus heard about the suspension of the progressive creative functions of the universe due to the non-combination of his potencies, such as the Mahat Tattva. Please repeat. The Rishi Maitreya said, the Lord thus heard about the suspension of the progressive creative functions of the universe. Due to the non-combination of his potencies, such as the Mahat Tattva. Purport. There is nothing wanting in the creation of the Lord. All the potencies are there in a dormant state, but unless they are combined by the will of the Lord, nothing can progress. The suspended progressive work of creation can only be revived by the direction of the Lord. Text number 2. Kala sangyam tada deving Vibrach Shaktim Urukramaha Trayoving Shati Tattvanam Ganam Yugapad Avishat Kala Sangyam Tada Deving Vibrach Shaktim Urukramaha Trayo Vingshati Tattvanam Ganam Yugapad Avishat. Follow. Kala Sangyam Tada Deving Vibrach Shaktim Urukramaha Trayavamshati Tattvanam Ganam Yugapad Avishat. Kala Sangyam Tada Deving Vibrach Shaktim Urukramaha Trayavamshati Tattvanam Ganam Yugapad Avishat. Kala Sangyam Tada Deving Vibrach Shaktim Urukramaha Trayavamshati Tattvanam Ganam Yugapad Avishat. Ladies? New Bhakti, okay. Kala Sangyam Tada Deving Vibrach Shaktim Urukramaha Trayavamshati Ganam Yugapat Arishat Kala Sanjantadadevim Vivrachaktim Urukramaha Trayovim Shakitattvanam Ganam Yugapat Arishat Kala Sanjantadadevim Vivrachaktim Urukramaha Trayovim Shakitattvanam Ganam Yugapat Arishat Kala Sanjantadadevim Trayovim Shakitattvanam Ganam Yugapat Arishat Kala Sanjantadadevim Vivrachaktim Urukramaha Trayovim Shakitattvanam Ganam Yugapat Arishat. Word meanings. Kala Sangyam, known as Kali. Tada, at that time. Devim, the goddess. Vibrat, destructive. Shaktim, potency. Urukramaha, the supreme powerful. Trayaktim Shati, 23. Tattvanam, of the elements. Ganam, all of them. Yugapat, simultaneously. Avishat, entered. Translation. The supreme powerful Lord then simultaneously entered into the 23 elements with the goddess Kali, his external energy, who alone amalgamates all the different elements. Please repeat. The supreme powerful Lord, then simultaneously entered into the 23 elements with the goddess Kali, his external energy, who alone amalgamates all the different elements. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. The ingredients of matter are counted as 23. The total material energy, false ego, sound, touch, form, taste, smell, earth, water, fire, air, sky, eye, ear, nose, tongue, skin, hand, leg, evacuating organ, genitals, speech, and mind. All are combined together by the influence of time and are again dissolved in the course of time. Time, therefore, is the energy of the Lord and acts in her own way by the direction of the Lord. This energy is called Kali and is represented by the dark, destructive goddess generally worshipped by persons influenced by the mode of darkness or ignorance in material existence. In the Vedic hymn, this process is described as Mula Prakritir Avikritir Mahadadyaha Prakriti Vikritaya Shakta Shoda Shaktas Tu Vikaro Na Prakritir Na Vikriti Purushaha. The energy which acts as material nature in a combination of 23 ingredients is not the final source of creation. The Lord enters into the elements and applies his energy called Kali. In all other Vedic scriptures, the same principle is accepted. In Brahma Samhita 535, it is stated, Eko pyasa rachayatum jagat andakotim yat chakti rasti jagat andachaya antaha andantarastha paramanu chayantarastam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship the primeval Lord Govinda, who is the original personality of Godhead. By his partial plenary expansion, Mahavishnu, he enters into material nature and then into each and every universe as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and then as Kshiradakshaya Vishnu into all the elements, including every atom of matter. Such manifestations of cosmic creation are innumerable, both in the universes and in the individual atoms. Similarly, this is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 10:42. Atava bahunaitena kingyatena tavarjuna vishtapyaham idam kritsnam ekankshena stito jagat. O Arjuna, there is no necessity of your knowing about my innumerable energies which act in various ways. I entered into the material creation by my partial plenary expansion, Paramatma, or the Supersoul, in all the universes and in all the elements thereof, and thus the work of creation goes on. The wonderful activities of material nature are due to Lord Krishna, and thus he is the final cause or the ultimate cause of all causes. Om Jnana Timarandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmiritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sapikarmane Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swakadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yatha Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sasajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Tang Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahaganalita Shri Vasakandatamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. It's so nice to be back here in Alachua. I'm sad to leave the holy dhams of Vrindavan and Mayapur. I seem to have carried a little of the dust in my cough, and I may be a little bit jet lagged, so please forgive me if I stop talking. It's not because I'm in ecstatic trance, I'm just falling asleep. So, we're hearing from Maitreya Muni about the process of the creation, the first primary creation and the secondary creation, and we'll be hearing from Maitreya Muni throughout the third canto and the fourth canto. Shukadeva Goswami is reciting how this discussion between Vidura and Maitreya Muni took place, and it's very important to study this process of creation, because we really have to understand that Krishna is everything. Vasudeva Sarvamiti, Bahunam Jananamante Jnanavanam Prapadyate Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sadurlabha. This is, if you want to really know how to surrender to Krishna, you have to first of all come to this knowledge of seeing Krishna in everything, understanding the Chaturshloki Bhagavatam that Krishna exists alone with his internal energy and is not created and destroyed. But we're in this material world. Oh, thank you. We're in this material world where it's very easy to become distracted from seeing that satisfying Krishna is the purpose of our lives and what our every endeavor should be directed towards. It's Krishna has a deluding potency, goddess Kali, Maya Devi, she's working under his direction, and her thankless task is to hide Krishna even though he's really everywhere. So the Chaturshloki Bhagavatam says anything that appears to have value but is not related to Krishna is an illusion. That he enters into this universe, but he doesn't enter into the cosmos. Or he enters into the elements, or he enters into the cosmos and he doesn't enter into the cosmos. And he enters into the elements and he doesn't. So how do we understand that? In fact, Lord Brahma asks Krishna before the Chaturshloki that I want to understand your transcendental form, and I also want to understand how you assume a material form even though you have no material form. So it's a little paradoxical. But this material form is here, this material world is created for two purposes. On the one hand, it provides a place for the rebellious or those living entities who are misusing their independence by not serving Krishna. It provides an opportunity for them to be in illusion. Krishna creates that opportunity where they can have the illusion of having enjoyment without serving him. But it also has another purpose, which is that it's an opportunity for those illusioned living entities to become purified, to take up the process of devotional service, and to re-enter Krishna's Leela with him in pure devotional service. So if we want to achieve that pure devotional service, we want to go through these 9 stages described by Srila Rupa Goswami, just to go through anartha nivritti, become fixed, and acquire a taste, a strong attachment, and never leave devotional service, have real spiritual emotions, and a steady ecstasy of always being aware of Krishna all the time. We really have to understand this process of creation. And we really have to understand how Krishna, his hand is in everything in creation. So how does he create this world? These elements, we've heard about the 23 elements, and how, as we were reading the Brahma Samhita yesterday, and there was a discussion about how in their nascent state they existed but as separate entities, and the non-application of the conglomerating process is the cause of their separate existence. So the point is that we should understand this metaphysics. We should understand that the mind, the senses, the sense objects, the tanmatras like sound and form and taste and odor, they're all inert material objects. Just like the materialists say everything is inert. They don't see. The very thorough, hardcore materialistic philosophers will say that we're just a bag of some kind of inert chemicals acting according to material laws, and we have the illusion that we're thinking and we're talking and we're conscious and aware of things. But really, the best way to describe us is just to describe us as these chemicals interacting according to laws. Or they may say that consciousness is a causally emergent property, which means it doesn't have any effect on anything else, but somehow or another consciousness arises from a combination of matter in some way, and that ultimately matter is primary. But really, the mind itself is another one of the inert elements. These are coverings of the conscious spirit souls. And without the touch of Krishna, nothing can move. So in the last chapter, Maitreya was explaining how these 23 elements, they couldn't be combined. The demigods who were in charge of the operation of the senses with their object, they couldn't do anything, so they prayed. They offered these beautiful prayers about how Krishna's lotus feet is like an umbrella and so forth. So then Krishna, he was able to help everything go by entering into the material universe, along with his deluding potency, time. The Rasaraj Prabhu, a long time ago, maybe 25 years ago or something like that, he got this Nobel Prize-winning physicist, Stapp, I think it's Henry Stapp, quantum mechanics guy, to actually go to the Bhaktivedanta Institute in Mumbai and to study Srimad Bhagavatam with him for I don't know, a couple months, maybe 2 or 3 months, and Henry Stapp produced a monograph about it where he described this whole description of how the material elements evolve from subtle to gross through the false ego interacting with the mode of ignorance, and described the whole thing. And one thing he noticed, or he called out, was that one difference between the materialistic scientific viewpoint. Henry Stapp was particularly interested in consciousness and its relation to problems in quantum mechanics. Don't ask me, I don't understand it. I'll take H.G.Akruranath's advice and not try to talk about science to scientists, or I'll look like a fool. But he wrote that this was different, that the active role that time plays in our Vedic description is different. That time isn't just a silent observer, but time is actually moving everything, and it's Krishna's destructive energy. When he shows his universal form to Arjuna, he says, "I'm time, and I've come to destroy everything, and only you, Pandavas, will remain here in this battlefield. I'm going to kill everybody else." And time is the destructive energy. Anything that exists in time has a beginning and an end. And time, we'll learn later from Maitreya how time is really an impersonal manifestation of Krishna that he uses. Srila Prabhupada describes it like a tape recorder. He uses it to create the illusion that he's not present in everything, that we're seeing something and forgetting him. So Maitreya Muni is a great jnani. He wasn't as an intimate a devotee as, of course, as Uddhava, a very special intimate devotee, but he was the disciple of Parashara Muni, and he got Krishna's personal darshan there at the time that Krishna, at this very special time, was when Krishna was giving these last instructions to Uddhava, which will be described later in the 11th canto in detail. And so he's a very expert personality to speak to Vidura about all these things, and he'll be speaking about later on about Dhruva Maharaj and King Priyavrata and Narada Muni's instructions to Prachini Barhashat about the allegory of King Puranjana and all these things. And now, at this part of the Bhagavatam, for many chapters, we'll be discussing the primary and the secondary creation. And some of it, there's descriptions of who was the parents of of different personalities who are also qualities in the universe. And we shouldn't just, we should resist the temptation to just kind of skip over this and think, I want to get to pastimes of Krishna again. We just had this beautiful Uddhava just described in summary the pastimes of Krishna. But we should try to study this very analytically and understand it very well, even though it's a subject that takes some work. It's like an academic subject, because it's also Srimad Bhagavatam. It's also very relishable, and when we know it, it gives us a strong footing in being able to see how Krishna is everywhere, and being able to see, like in the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about how, what's the verse? Naiva kinchit karomiti yukto manyete tattvavit ashnan pashyan spushan jigran. Well, I'm getting it wrong, but pralapan vishrajan grinan unmishan nimishanapi. So he's saying that those who are actually seeing things as they are, even while they're opening their eyes, eating, taking things, walking, moving, doing all these sensual activities, they know, they're seeing that my senses are interacting with their objects, and I'm really not doing anything. I'm the soul sitting on this machine that's being conducted by the modes of nature. It's also described in the 3rd chapter a bit, Tattvavitu Mahabaho, Guna Karma Vibhagayaho, Gunan Gunesha Vartanta, Iti Matva Nasajjate. They don't become entangled. The illusion in the material consciousness is we think that we're doing things that it's important for us to do, and then we'll change our situation into some way to become happy. that this will satisfy us, to protect us, and we become working to achieve these results without considering that the real work that we're meant to do is to serve Krishna and tolerate the waves of what material nature is doing. So we have to see through the eyes of Scripture, become Shastra Chakshus, see how these elements, fire, water, and air, and earth, it's a very different approach to things. It begins with consciousness as primary, and the different material elements, including our own senses and their objects and so forth, are connected to one another, as was described in the last chapter. Sky or space is connected to sound and the sense of hearing or the ear, and then further from subtle to gross, fire is connected to form, and air is connected to touch, and so forth. How these the elements of the world, the actual elements of the world here, are being described in terms of experiences of bewildered spirit souls who are under this control of Goddess Kali, like that. So nothing can move until Krishna comes in and sets things in motion by his time potency, which is his diluting or destructive potency. And so I guess we can have some discussion at this point and come back further, I hope. Yes, Prabhu.
Yes.
Do you have a mic?
So we say nothing can move without the hands of Krishna, or he is the cause of all causes. But the scientists are proving that everything can move without a cause.
No.
They're trying to prove that there's no need. Right? There's no need to get God involved. Really, he's not really involved in anything. They can prove everything exists without him. See?
Without him, but they're saying there's a cause. They're caught up in this illusion of cause and effect. Evedang sasar jagre bhagavan atma maya sarasadrupaya chaso gunamaya gunavubu. In the beginning of creation, this creation is being described over and over again. In the Bhagavatam, in the second chapter of the first canto, there's a description of creation. Then in the second canto, in chapter 5, we'll have a very good description. But Krishna creates the laws of cause and effect. In the spiritual world, time is conspicuous by its absence, and everything is just unfolding according to this transcendental relationships of devotional service. But materialists become really interested in causes and effects, and the materialistic philosophers question, what does it mean for something to be a cause? Is there just, if something reliably happens right after something else, does that mean it's caused, or is there something else that has to actually force it or push it? But that's the thing, they're only looking at these material causes and effects, and they're not seeing the actual original cause, which is the absolute person who's transcendental. And he has nothing to do with the material world, and at the same time, he has everything to do with it. So it sounds like a paradox, but like Bhaktisiddhanta says, the absolute truth, personality of Godhead is both transcendent and immanent. So immanent means he's present in everything. Andantarastam paramanu chayantarastam. He's present everywhere by his energy. It's his energy. So in one sense, Krishna is everything. But then he's also transcendent. That means there's nothing mundane about him. So anything we see that appears mundane, and materialists, everything they see is mundane. Everything we see that appears mundane is not connected to Krishna. It really is connected to Krishna, but they're an illusion. It's like the description of if you see a rope and you think it's a snake. There's a real rope there, but what they're taking it as is something different, as something without Krishna. I'm sorry. Did you have further?
No, I think
just when you said cause and effect, it made me go off.
Well, there are three theories abiogenesis, evolution, and Big Bang. They're trying to establish these that could explain the origin of everything, the origin of the universe, the origin of life, and the origin of species. And there is no, online I've seen it over and over. There's one atheist that's a very prominent writer, and she gets like 1 million views a month, and she's saying that, it seems like the world just loved her, because to get 1 million views a month is a great achievement, and sometimes I get bewildered, really. And she's a real atheist, really. But most of her writings is based on these theories, and she's confirming and establishing them, really, but...
So that we see Krishna's time energy is acting. His diluting potency is very powerful and is popular. And it's our job, it's an important job for Iskcon. Really, Prabhupada said, I think he said at one time that the Bhaktivedanta Institute is the most important part of his movement. It's our job that we will develop great devotees who are, very fixed in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, but are also qualified to discuss with people who have advanced academic knowledge in these questions of cosmology and biogenesis and so forth. To show that this is not just another sentimental faith or religion, and you have your faith and someone else has their faith. We're going to show that this is the actual absolute truth. We have different evidences, we have different kinds of evidences, we have a whole different system and tradition. It may look to them, yes, and Prangovinda has a comment.
I was just saying, we are not against science or scientists. It is not nice to just say scientists are doing it.
Yeah.
We are not against science or scientists. There may be some atheists in the form of scientists doing something. It has nothing to do with science.
Right.
We appreciate science.
Yeah.
Krishna is there. So we should be very careful when we use the vocabulary that those scientists are bad. It's not nice to say like that.
But Prabhupada often said it.
No, I understand. But there are some atheists taking the position of scientists and manipulating. That's
right.
different.
Will come a time when the great scientists are also devotees. That's an important point. And but there has been, way back in the 17th century, with Galileo and Descartes and so forth. For example, in the Principia Philosophia by René Descartes, who was one of the real early scientists. Everybody thinks of him in terms of giving a more of a conception of the soul, or the mind. But he was giving a conception of matter, and he was really interested in studying that in terms of mathematics and things. But in the Principia, he wrote that he was mindful of what happened to Galileo and the power of the church, and he said, of course we know God created the world in 6 days, just like it says in the Bible and everything. But he created it in such a way that even if he didn't touch it, it would have created itself according to those laws. And then he went into describing the laws and how it would have created himself. So there is a strong underlying, you could say atheistic and materialistic, even though he professed himself to be a serious religionist, and I'm sure Newton really was. He worked really hard on the prophecies of Daniel and some numerological studies of that. A lot of them really were theistic, Christians and things. But there was a strong underlying approach that if we can explain nature in terms of something that doesn't involve the touch of a supreme being or a higher intelligence, then we're making some kind of real advancement in things. I was listening to Pracharananda's class yesterday. I'll get to you, Stiti. But it was interesting because I appreciated both what Maharaj was saying and what Pracharananda was saying. And Pracharananda was. It's important that we don't, start sounding like fundamentalists that are not intelligent, not thoughtful philosophers, because these are Jiva Goswami, these are the greatest philosophers. The Srimad Bhagavatam, Maitreya Muni is a great philosopher. He's taking all this knowledge from the Vedas, and then he's putting it in this nice form in Srimad Bhagavatam that you can understand it very well. But what Maharaj was also saying is, regardless of what Darwin said or thought he was doing or whatever, that he gave an alternative explanation for some of the evidence of design in the biological world that had become a very strong, in the 18th century. I was telling you before class that one time I met Indra. Everybody thinks, oh, Indra is just a chanter and everything. But I met him in the stairwell in the Gurukula, and we got in a conversation, and we both had read this book of intellectual history by a historian named Arthur Anken Lovejoy called The Great Chain of Being. And the book was saying that in the 18th century, Enlightenment, after Newton and everything like that, there still was this big sense of what they call natural theology, that a lot of the deists and everything were in favor of understanding that we have to understand God through the argument of design. So other arguments, like ontological arguments, other arguments for the existence of God, had become less popular in this. The Great Chain of Being was this conception that all the different species of life showed the fullness of God, that he had created a kind of species for every kind of creature. And but this was an argument that Darwin himself was very aware of, that William Paley, a natural theologian, had written that if you find a watch on a beach, and you look at it and see how it's working and ticking and telling time, and you can tell that somebody created it. So how much more so if you found a human eye on the beach and saw how it worked and how the pupil contracted and all these things, and then imagine that it really works, that it's connected to a human being so that it can see, and so Darwin himself was aware that, in fact, he suppressed for some time. He didn't publish his theory of natural selection. I mean, the Voyage of the Beagle was in the 1830s. He had this, but he knew it was going to create a big disturbance when, he offered an explanation that shows how the appearance of design in biology can take place through, okay, Steve is shaking his head.
He framed, Origins was a deistic presentation. Descent of Man was agnostic, and that was 15 years later. I mean, he attributed it, and also in his notes earlier, from 10 years earlier, he was parsing out all kinds of, how could an infinite being not anticipate any variable? I mean, even if you say chance, from our perspective, an infinite being could, because, and then the goal is, because it's in a Christian context, you have to get to man, because man's got to be saved by the Lord Jesus Christ. And because man has a soul. So how are you going to get to that? You've got to get to that. But
nevertheless, he was aware that he would undercut Paley, and he would undercut this natural theology.
Yeah, so what? Paley's just another, it's a very weak argument to depend on your theism on someone like Paley. And he just presented it as just evidence of design. He didn't present it as an absolute truth. He knew. It's just evidence. It's just arguments you can use with atheists, whatever. And within our tradition, natural theology is just, within the realm of punditry, we can engage these arguments. But the scientists haven't proven anything absolutely. They can't do philosophy. And you can't find definitive metaphysical certainty through empiricism, through conditional sense perception. This is core to our philosophy. Because, you may get to the point you're not the body. Like Descartes, I think, therefore I am, because I'm conscious. Then you have to get into bhakti, and you can wrangle endlessly. One last point before I hand this off to somebody else. One of the problems, one of the challenges of the 17th century, that these intellectuals are looking to God's book of nature, is how it's been framed, is because of the Reformation. They see when people go into God's book of books, the book, they're getting into all kinds of crazy stuff. So they're thinking maybe there's some more solid intellectual basis in God's book. So we've got to be careful when we're criticizing scientists. We're not just trying to replace one form of neophyte theism with another form of neophyte theism, because if you're just engaging that, you're going to invite atheists and scientists to, this is all nuts. We're going to explain it our own way. Yeah, well, those are arguments, and we engage in that. Why not? So you find the argument and you present it.
Okay, let's hear from the other side of the room. I got to say that I never trusted Descartes. You know, he did this thing. You know, if you read the Discourse on Method, that he does the cogito and says that there's this natural light within us, so we can tell that that some wicked sorcerer might be completely illusioning me, but he can't convince me that I don't exist because I'm the thinking person that's considering all this, therefore I exist. And then he says that same natural light within us, then he applies to that it tells us, the geometric proofs and other things that we can't deny through logic. And then he takes this weird turn and says, and also that light within me tells me that God is not a wicked sorcerer, but he wants me to study the book of nature through the method of reason and observation. And it seems like he doesn't see that really there is this sorceress, Kali, who's out there all the time trying to tell us you can enjoy your senses, you can be happy without devotion, you can and that things can exist without the need, and we can explain things without the need for having an intelligent designer. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Back in the purport, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, time I am. But here, time is he refers to as Kali, simultaneous, as her.
Well, Krishna is talking about the universal form in the Bhagavad Gita, that the universal form is time. It's not one of the transcendental forms, but he's explaining it that there's this form that's helpful for neophytes to try to see that the universe is actually a person, a supreme person, and that material universe actually gets destroyed. It's created and destroyed, and it's not the eternal transcendental universe. So, yes, Kali, goddess Kali is the time energy by which he, Mayadhyakshena Prakriti. He's supervising everything, but he's not personally involved with it. In fact, it's said that she can't stand in front of him. That, he has to be, for Kali to do her illusion magic tricks, Krishna has to be withdraw. Like nescience is darkness and Godhead is light. So as soon as light enters, the darkness has to leave. So for darkness to do her magic of bewildering all the materialists, or all the sense enjoyers, or all the non-devotees, then Krishna has to give her the opportunity to bewilder them. So he is functioning along with his time energy to carry out that illusory process, but he's just supervising it.
Yeah, so you made the distinction that was the universal form saying time I am.
Yes.
Therefore, okay. Now also here, he says the Supreme Lord then simultaneously entered into the pradhan. Would we say 23 elements with the goddess Kali? Whereas otherwise we hear he impregnates that pradhan.
So actually it's the Mahatattva, right? The pradhan is in this state of equilibrium. Am I getting that right, you scholars?
Yeah, when it manifests, pradhan manifests, that's called Mahatattva.
But so when it actually becomes, when the modes start to become a little agitated, then it becomes Mahatattva. Then he inserts the jivas who've lying dormant during the cataclysm. He inserts them back into the nature. So that's like he's impregnating material nature with living souls. But also he enters into as the three Purushas. Well, as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, he fills the water up in the universe. And Lord Brahma sprouts from his navel. He becomes like the soul of the universe. And then he becomes the soul of every soul when he impregnates her, that he comes along with each soul and he facilitates their enjoyment. He's the overseer and permitter, upadrashtanamanta. I don't know if I'm answering you.
Yeah, but still it's, enters with the goddess Kali.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's right there
He
in
doesn't,
the
he
Brahma
doesn't
Samhita too.
impregnate the goddess Kali.
Well, he's doing two things. He's impregnating her with the jivas, and that will be probably discussed in the next few verses. And he's also allowing the material elements to be conglomerated. Remember, non-application of the conglomerating process is the cause of their separate existence. And then Goddess Kali is the conglomerating principle which allows these things. And we should understand that these things are different. They're just elements. Like, you say there's so much gold, or we have so much iron in the world, and there's so much iron in our bodies and things like that. So every soul is going to have coverings of false ego and these five knowledge acquiring senses and so forth. But there's also these elements that are out there, and they become like the body of the universal form.
So can we say that he impregnates after he enters with goddess Kali, and then he impregnates all of that?
But he doesn't impregnate directly through Shiva. It is Shiva who does it.
By the
If
glance.
the
Well,
Lord
his glance impregnates her, and the glance is Shiva, and the function of Shiva is in relation to the function of Shambhu in relation to Jivas is that the material universe is created by Shiva, right?
Yeah.
But so as far as the timing, I think, if I recall correctly, the description in these first 10 verses of this chapter is not exactly in chron order, and I think if you read the 5th chapter, the 2nd canto, you'll get a better sort of what comes first, what comes next. But because there's these devas that are the false ego in the mode of that's the last chapter. But the false ego in the mode of goodness creates these devas who are associated. I think there's 10 specific devas associated with each other, working in knowledge acquiring senses. And we see something over here. I don't know if I'm rambling because I am a little jet lagged.
Just a quick question.
Oh, sorry. It's coming up the reconciliation of this is all happening externally or internally, because Vaishnavas are all internalists, right? So it's the source is inside us.
But there really is
or is there an outside source as well? In other words, beyond all the universe is the source, or is it through inside that the source is the source?
I'm not sure I'm understanding your question, but
well, I guess
you're talking about the creation of.
In some spiritual schools, it's like for example, Taoists or externalists. They just look at nature, yin and yang, whereas internalists only believe what's inside their heart, their soul. In other words, the only way they can understand this, the source is by going inside. It's not like some outside thing.
So the way I answer it is there is an external world. In fact, there's numberless universes. But the worlds are created for the use of conscious jivas, which have their own internal life, but their consciousness is impure, and so they're not perceiving things as they really are. But if materialistic people say, that there's all these planets out there, and maybe there's life on one of them or something like that. We say, of course there's life. There's life everywhere we look. On this planet, wherever we go, in the volcano, in the freezing, Antarctica, we find living beings in every condition. And it's because creation is meant for the rectification or a place for them to enjoy their particular quality of illusion. But there really is an external world that is a material creation, but it really is connected to Krishna. So it's not. If we see it properly, we are in the spiritual world also. Let me say it this: we spiritualize it, like whatever food we eat, we first offer it to Krishna, And that makes it spiritualized. All these flowers and the incense that we offer, it spiritualizes it. It's part of the process that we then come in contact through the spiritual master and through the deities and the devotional service that we do. We come in contact with the internal energy of Krishna. But there's also an external energy which is always sort of inviting us to forget Krishna. And so the process of devotional service, at least in the beginning stages, is to always remember him, never forget him, give up the sense that there's any progress or any value in anything that's not related to his devotional service. That's the process of surrender. Whatever's favorable for devotional service, accept it. Whatever's unfavorable, reject it. All right, go ahead.
No.
I didn't understand.
I guess my question is, if you're looking for source, Krishna, is he inside of us or is he outside of the material creation?
That's what I was saying before about him being both. He's immanent. Immanent means he's in everything, that he's the soul of our soul, that's super soul. And then he's also transcendent, which means that he has no mundane characteristics. Everything about him is completely pure. And actually the super soul is one of his expansions, a portion of a plenary portion.
But the super soul's inside, like you're pointing inside.
Yeah.
So the super soul's inside, not outside.
Right.
The super outside.
He's inside every atom.
He's also outside.
From Krishna's perspective, there is no inside and outside.
Yeah.
So the super soul,
Our
sheer reduction.
in this material illusion.
Our illusion is we think there is inside and outside and separateness.
Got it. Yeah.
But, I mean, it's all him, but then his individuality and variegedness and that kind of kind.
But the super soul comes along.
Yeah. No, I got that.
The super soul comes along with the bewildered entities and sits beside them as they experience the illusion of being separate from him. But the super soul also has a planet in the material world called Shwetadweep, and he's residing there as the Lord of the maintainer of everything. Yeah.
But that's not the source.
Well, he is the source.
They're all one. We're trying to make it separate.
So the thing is, like the light of one candle, although it burns separately in other candles, you can light other candles with it, and they still burn with the same potency, although they're still an original candle. And that original candle is Krishna, and he doesn't have anything to do. He's just playing. Krishna's just enjoying himself with his devotees and all these loving exchanges in an intimate way. But then he has different expansions. First he expands as Balaram, and Balaram expands into all this is explained to Sanatana Goswami in the 23rd chapter, I think, of Madhya Lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita. But there's quadruple expansions, and there's a Narayan, and there's the different Narayans who are. But they're all these different swangsha. They're called his own form, and they're all identical. They're all him. They're not different. So if you think that there's a supreme being, why does he have to have only one form? And some people say, well, how can you say that God has a form, because God is infinite, and if he's infinite, how can he be here and not there, and isn't he everywhere, and if he's everywhere, can he not have a form? But you say, how can you say that he doesn't have a form? Even you have a form. That he has a form, and not only a form, but he has unlimited forms. But they're not like our forms. They're not under the control of material nature of Goddess Kali. So these infinite forms are spiritual transcendental forms, and the original one is Krishna, who plays a flute and has a peacock feather on his head. And the super soul is an expansion that of him that he undertakes for creating the material world. He feels incomplete that there are living entities who aren't serving him in the spiritual world, and he creates a material world to give them an opportunity to come back to him then. But he also gives them free will and an opportunity to forget him. And as super soul, I see I've gone over my time, but as super soul, he facilitates that. He maintains everyone, and he permits everything to happen. And he does it in this amazing way that everything happens just right. That, millions of complicated, nobody could calculate, all the different variables and but whatever happens is under the supervision and direction of Supersoul, like they say, not a blade of grass moves without the sanction of the Lord. Okay?
Yeah.
I think that we're out of time. Any final, if there's a final?
You mean there is out of
Huh?
time?
Yeah. We're transcendentally out of time. Sure. Well, we could keep talking is there some,
That's okay.
is there some, like, somebody has to go do service or something? Anyone who has to leave can, of course, leave.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
So, Prabhu, I want to understand a contradiction, in Srila Prabhupada's purports, in the class today, you have used illusion many times. And actually, I should say the basic difference between Advaitins, like Shankara's philosophy, and Dvaitins, like Ramanuja, Madhvacharya, Vallabhacharya, us, Vaishnavas, is that we believe that the world is real, it's not an illusion. But Shankara says this world, this Maya is an illusion. So basically, when we use the term illusory energy or illusion, we start supporting Mayavad. Is that way kind of
No, it's was Vivartavad versus Mayavad. And we say that there's also an illusion, but there's a real rope that we think is a snake. And they think the snake isn't there. There's no such snake,
That's a classic example given by Shankara himself. The snake analogy, like snake and rope, is just Shankara's classic. Another one of that, he said was like Gatakash, like a picture, like sky, so that's kind of typical.
Yeah.
So we are sort of like giving Shankara's example to prove.
Shankara himself, Shankaracharya, of course, is, perfect transcendental. He says Narayana Parovyakta, that actually Lord Narayan exists before the material creation, and or beyond the material creation, and it's really a lot of of course he, in the Puranas it describes that he's, an incarnation of Lord Shiva. He says that he's going to descend in Kali Yuga to preach a kind of covered Buddhism, but it's his followers and their commentaries that get into the completely offensive just denial of the form of the eternal form of God. And Lord Chaitanya says Mayavadi Shunya Apara, what is it? Mayavadi Hoy, Mayavadi Basha, what? Aparad. What is it? Mayavadi Basha Sarvanash. But he also says it's a terrible offense because they're trying to cut off all the limbs of Vishnu.
But the question is that whether this world is illusion or it's a real.
It's the world is real. That's the point. That he really creates these elements and they really exist. They can't move without him, but they're really there. But we don't see that. Therefore, we can use them in his service. If they weren't real, what would be the point of offering him a flower? We're offering him a real flower. But if we're trying to offer the flower to our girlfriend instead, we're not seeing what the flower is for. And we're misunderstanding the flower as being permanent when it's really temporary.
Well, things like we use the word illusion differently than Mayavadis.
Yes. They're saying it's just like
Unreal.
Yeah, it's unreal, like it has no substance at all. And we're saying it has a substance, but because it's Krishna's illusory energy. But it's the illusory energy because it's a place where it's established in such a way by Krishna's diluting time potency so that people can see it as if it's not connected to Krishna, even though it has to be connected to Krishna. So Krishna both is everything, and at the same time, not everything is Krishna. So I always meet these people on book distribution things that say, why should I go to a temple? Why should I read the book? God is everywhere. God is me. I'm in that tree. The tree is God. But they're not seeing God. So Krishna explains that in the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. He says, that I am the offering. I'm the sacrifice. I'm all these things. I am, I give forth the heat. He says, whatever devas you actually worship, you're really worshiping me. But if you don't really see me in it, then you're going to fall down. Tatvenatas chivantite. If you don't come to the point of actually understanding actual Krishna, then yanti deva varta devan pitrin yanti pitra varta. Those who worship the devas go to live with the devas, and it's not. But if you worship Krishna, you come to him. So he's saying, you're worshiping him the wrong way, but you're actually worshiping him. Which is very different from the, sort of the angry, jealous God of the Abrahamic religions who says, how dare you worship anybody but me. Krishna says, worship the devas, sure, that's in the mode of goodness, but if you're trying to get something material out of it, then your intelligence has been stolen away by illusion. You're thinking, I'll get something worthwhile without just getting the pleasure of Krishna, pleasing Krishna. That's the only thing that's really worthwhile for a pure devotee. So yes, we're using illusion in a different way from the Mayavadis. They say there's nothing really there. And we're saying it's something there, but you're misunderstanding what it is. So so tell me, because Shankaracharya says, and the snake and the rope example is his example. So what does he mean by the rope? What is the rope? Is it a formless thing? What is it?
The rope is coming from yourself. Like the rope is a manifestation of your mind. Like it's coming from your mind. Your mind has made a mistake. Like it's a false. It's like,
so what's the snake in that?
It has to exist in order for you to see.
Yeah, I mean that's what we see. What they see, the big one is that, right? That it's not like the illusion is like the examples you're saying on this. You think your mind created a snake. And basically,
in order for mind.
Yeah, exactly. But the experience is nonetheless you created a snake, even if it's a rope. It's like you can be freaked out. I've seen so many people, even a stuffy. One Indian lady had a tiger, fake tiger. You showed her, she's like, ah! It's like, it's false. It's false. It's like, no, ah! But I have to hide her light in trouble every time.
Right. So the stuffed tiger was real, but also a real tiger is real, but in her mind she made a false connection.
Yes, exactly.
Descartes had a somewhat similar argument. He said, because after, I think, I'm not saying Descartes' whole philosophy is like, wow, but...
It was, for like 50 years or something, it was the dominant paradigm, and he defeated the occult scientists.
He didn't go on with Ptolemy's or the whole shooter. But after, you're right, after, I think Iskcon, which is basically you're not the body, with some help, then he's the Augustinian argument, I can't conceive of a perfect being if one doesn't exist.
I associate that argument with Anselm, although Descartes, he worked on Anselm's ontological argument, which, by the way, I identify with the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, that when Krishna says, if in any category of things, whatever is the best represents me and is me, then there has to be me, because I'm the best of everything. As long as you understand that conception of God as being the best of everything, then it has to exist.
I'm suggesting that defeats Sankara philosophy, because if you can imagine it's a real tiger, how could God not create a real tiger?
God.
Yeah.
Should we end there?
Yeah, then let's go.
Okay.